And we're back, Truth for Seniors, and it is a gorgeous day today. We certainly needed the rain, and we appreciate that. And we're at truthforseniors.com, and a lot of information there that you need to check out. But one thing I just wanted to mention real quick, I so appreciate the feedback that we're getting with our shows, radio shows, and the different websites. You know, we're very grateful to people like David with Assisted Senior Transitions to give us the information that he does. As I've always promised you folks, I will find experts and bring you experts to give you the information that you're looking for. I won't just look it up or Google it and try to give you my best shot. I'll find the experts, and I have in this situation. So we were talking before the break about two things that are really important as people are aging. So tell us more.
Well, one is the activity level that they try in order to maintain it. A lot of people who stay at home unfortunately become more and more isolated.
Sure.
They don't physically get up and move very much, and they don't have people to talk to, and they maybe don't have any real mental stimulus going on there.
And they don't eat very well.
And they don't eat very well, which is an added problem. That's one of the best things that does happen to those individuals when they move into a quality facility, because then they get 3 square meals a day.
Yeah.
They get physical activity as much as possible. They get intellectual stimulation from all the people around them.
Yeah.
And those things keep us younger longer.
Yeah.
Believe me.
Remember that, Bill. So,
there is the truth in use it or lose it.
Yeah.
It's
I
really
agree.
there.
Sure.
It
Yeah.
really is there.
Yeah.
And some of the other issues are, one that you mentioned is how do you pay for it for the time you have to go in your life? Nobody knows for sure if I'm going to be here tomorrow.
Sure.
But on the other hand, our asset base, we know what that is.
Yep.
And when I talk to the families I do, I always try to convince them, plan for the longest run possible
Yeah.
and make sure that you have the coverage. If you don't, you can hit a gap, as I call it, where you've expended your funds, but you're not yet qualified to go into skilled nursing and get onto the Medi-Cal wagon there.
Yeah.
And that interim time, that gap time, can be sometimes years.
Oh, yeah. It can be really bad. And one of the things that we are encouraging people to do across the board is to put, the medical field puts together what they call a care plan. And what we want to do is broaden that and make it a long-term care plan where we, incorporate the use of your services and financial and understanding the programs that are out there that might help with the cost and the resources, support groups and caregiver, resources and all these things, so that if the time comes, you already know who to go to, who to call, where to start, because most people don't. And you said something, we have a little bit different way of saying it, but it's the same concept. I always tell people as a planner, I'm going to plan for the worst, the longest care, the worst case situation. But then we hope and pray for the best. So it's better to have a plan in place and not need it than, of course, the other way around. And so, all right, so I know you're a humble individual and you don't make a lot of claims, even though you probably could, about your services. But I want to say something that I think I'm right to say, and I think I have the right to say it because I've experienced it. But in my opinion, I believe you're the only one that takes your level of care to the level that you do, and by that I mean actually taking people to the facilities and helping them meet people and understand. I know some companies just give them like a list that they might email them of available ones in the area, or maybe they meet with them and then tell them where to go and look around, or these are the ones that might meet your need. But from what I've experienced, you take it a step farther. And so can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. The first thing is, as I mentioned earlier, I always meet with the family and the individual and make sure I know what's going on, both in the family dynamics as well as the needs of the individual. I then help them plan tours so they can see the different types of facilities that they could fit into, both financially as well as by need.
Sure.
And at that point, they get an idea and they can understand. It's going to be up to them to make their decision ultimately. But the other thing I do is, in that process, is I buffer them from the calls, because once they get on to the lists the
Oh,
list you
yeah.
mentioned,
Hadn't thought about that.
then all the facilities start calling them at 6
Sure.
o'clock at night, one after the other. And you'll hear from
Want
30
you
or
to move
40
in.
different people, come on,
Uh-huh.
we'll move you in tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
And it may not be the best place for you.
Sure.
So I place myself in a position, and almost every family asks me to do this, to
Mm-hmm.
be that buffer, so that they have the opportunity to learn
Mm-hmm.
and then make their decision on their own time, not to be harassed by, if you ever go to the car dealership and you go look at a car, that little salesperson's going to call you for the next 3-4 weeks,
Uh-huh.
every day.
That's why I give him Bill's name. Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
It makes sense, and I should think of that
Sure.
myself. But in this case, they call me, and I
Uh-huh.
will call the family members, and I'll say,
Mhm.
okay, this is still the same issue. Have you guys made a decision or not?
Mhm.
And if they haven't, I say, fine, call me when you're ready to make it.
Sure.
I've had some families that I've worked with for months,
Mhm.
8, 9, 10 months, before
Wow.
they finally come to the point where they realize they couldn't do it at home. It's now
Mhm.
time to move on. I may
Mhm.
have helped them get home care
Sure.
to bridge that, but it's an interim choice. It's
Yeah.
not a long-term choice.
Yeah, wow. Now, you also mentioned that, and I hadn't thought about this, but your services are really ongoing.
Yes.
It's not just a one-time, okay, we got you placed, and we're done.
Yeah,
Because people's needs change, don't they?
they do. I've had more than one client where I've helped them into independent living,
Mhm.
and then they needed to have higher care, and they can't get it, and they can't afford it because of the hourly rates to
Okay.
get enough care in an independent situation, and then
Mhm.
they have to move on to a care position
Sure.
like assisted living.
Mhm.
I've also had them start in assisted living in a larger facility,
Mhm.
but then their needs get so great that they can't provide enough people to take care of that person.
Sure, yeah.
And have to move them into more of almost a custodial care in effect, where,
Yeah.
like the 6-bed facility that has
Mhm.
2 caregivers all day long
Mhm.
and available to
Yeah,
them.
those are hard to beat. I mean,
They are
to
for
be
that
honest.
purpose.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they really are. And so now I know that you just personally, you're involved in a lot of different groups and associations that lend itself to more education on your part and learning, but you also provide information. That's something that's important to me because I believe that you always got to be learning to be the best that you can for your client. To be a true expert, in my opinion, you always have to be learning and staying on the cutting edge as much as possible. But where do you see, I'm just kind of curious, in the next few minutes before this break, where do you see us going? We've got, baby boomers turning 65 by record numbers,
Right.
and I won't bore everybody with all the statistics that I have, but it's incredible the amount of people that are going to need your services in mind in the next decade, and are so ill prepared.
Many of them are. Recent statistic that came out was that 2/3 of that baby boomer group don't have enough in assets to even take 1 year worth of assisted living.
That's true, yeah.
That's
Yeah.
unfortunate, but
Mhm.
true. So they either have to change their planning,
Mhm.
or they have to change their assets to make them
Yeah.
more available to them for longer-term care. They have to be very careful to husband what little funds they have available
That's right, yeah.
in order to survive.
And to take that one step further, the majority of the funds that they do have available are not funds that they'd want to pull from, because most of them are funds that came from a 401k or an IRA that they were converted from,
Right.
and that's all taxable dollars if they have to pull it
Right.
out, you
Exactly.
know? And I met with a family the other day, and they're retired from the state, and they had a very sizable 401k that got converted to an IRA, but literally no money. And then they have a home that's paid for. Well,
Right.
that's great, congratulations, but boy, oh boy, that's really hard when you start looking at, the income, thank God, is good enough that they don't have to pull from the IRA. Of course, they will when she's 70 and a half, but for long-term care, if they can't pay for that out of the income, boy, that's a double whammy.
It
you know?
is, and it limits what they can do, and it also limits it limits their life.
Yes.
And that's one of the reasons they need to see people like us early in the process, so that we can
Absolutely.
explain to them what
Mhm.
dollars are going to have to be available, and those dollar amounts are going up